You're listening to She Speaks, a Let Her Speak podcast that celebrates women's fearlessness, resiliency, and readiness to change the world. Welcome back, friends, to the She Speaks podcast. I'm Catherine Porth, your host and the founder of Let Her Speak. Have you ever thought back on how you first connected with someone who ultimately has had a major impact on your life? Sometimes those connections come from something as simple as answering an email from someone you've never met. That was the case for how Berta Medina and I entered each other's lives. What started as a serendipitous email connection has blossomed into a friendship and mutual admiration between two women. While the first time Berta ever spoke with the Let Her Speak community was during our Women's Summit in 2019, I had the opportunity in September of 2020 to sit down with my friend and dive deeper into her story. Since 2020, Berta has faced numerous personal challenges, but has also risen out of those challenges with even more determination and resoluteness. I can't wait for you to hear the journey she has been on in our next episode. But first, let's travel back to September 2020 with Berta Medina, founder of Dreamers Succeed. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Let Her Speak, She Speaks series. And today I have a very special guest with me, someone who I really look up to, who has been a huge part of the inspiration and motivation that goes behind Let Her Speak. Berta Medina is a coach and founder of Dreamers Succeed. And if you attended our Let Her Speak Women's Summit in 2019, you had the opportunity to hear her story, which was incredible. So I'm so excited to have Berta on today. Welcome, Berta.
Thank you, Catherine. I'm so excited to be here with you and sharing this space. And I just love and admire all that you're doing through Let Her Speak and through everything that you do to touch our lives. So thank you for having me.
Oh, well, pleasure's all mine. And for those of you who don't know, so Berta also has her own podcast for Dreamers Succeed that she asked me to be on earlier this year, which was amazing. And so, of course, I had to have, once I started She Speaks, I had to have Berta on to return the favor for one thing, but also everybody needs to hear Berta's story.
Thank you, Kath. And that was I really appreciate you making the time. I know how busy you are, but that was so well received and such a blessing to our audience. So thank you again for making the time for that.
No problem. I was actually thinking back, and I think that was one of the very last times that I was in a public space. I was at the Entrepreneur Center that day.
Right.
And I think that was the last time I was actually physically at an office space before we had to all go into quarantine.
Wow. Yes. Yeah, that timing is right about right.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Crazy.
So Berta, I would love for you to first share with everybody, your story and your journey that has brought you to where you are now.
I love that, Catherine. And again, thank you for opening the space. So my story is kind of boring, sort of normal, whatever, but I will share it anyway. I was born and raised in Miami, 2 kids, married for 33 years, have a delicious little 8-year-old granddaughter. And I was in the title insurance on the real estate side for 28 years and loved every minute of it. I just loved what I did. I was really mentored by some great people in that field, really just geniuses in what that industry became. And eventually started my own company, had offices in Miami and Orlando, figured I would die doing title because I loved it that much. And then began doing a coaching certification course at the University of Miami when I found out that coaching was an actual thing. People had always called me their coach. I didn't know it was a thing you could really do as a career. So I took the certification course just out of curiosity. That's at the same time I got invited on a mission trip to Kenya and Tanzania, where we were going to be serving and working with Maasai children and women and helping them uh, break that cycle of poverty and make it so that they could get their education, their medical, and their nutritional needs met until they graduated high school. So all of us, and part of that mission trip entailed climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, and each of the climbers sponsored a child. They were all 5 years old, so we were raising funds to make sure that they could have the education that they needed from then until they graduated their version of high school, because in Kenya, school is public, but it's not free. So people living in such poverty just do not have the means to be able to send their children to school. And then that cycle just continues, and generation after generation, they're not able to get the education, and they're not able to climb out of poverty. So that really was the focus of the mission trip. And we were in Kenya and Tanzania for 3 weeks. And I came back from this trip and thought, this is going to be my life. I sat my husband and my children down and I said, listen, I'm retiring from title. So they thought I'd fallen on the mountain, hit my head, and just lost it. And I said, I'm going to be coaching full time. I just sort of jumped off the ledge and figured I'd grow my wings on the way down, and did just that. I think I got back from the trip in October. By December 31st, I was retired. I gave my business away, my Miami business away to friends. I didn't even wait to sell it, and just began coaching full time, because I knew that coaching was not only going to be the most rewarding career path for me, but was also going to give me the flexibility, the abundance, and the time to be able to focus on these mission trips and serving these children on an even greater capacity around the world, which is what I've been doing since then, since 2014. And that's how Dreamers Succeed was born. And that's how I sort of got my life back. I knew that I could not serve the way that I wanted to serve, being stuck in an office 14 to 16 hours a day, no matter how much I loved it. And 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 here we are, in a nutshell. That's my nutshell.
I absolutely, every time I hear your story, I always pick up another nugget of what that path looked like. And I'd say, I mean, yours is definitely I wouldn't say extreme, but just say what a way to take yourself outside of the world that you were in, and really see the opportunities that you had to do something else, which is just incredible. And so one thing I've actually never asked is, where did the name Dreamers Succeed come from?
It was so funny, because it just sort of, I always feel I'm big on vision boards. And actually in 2007, my cousins and I all got together and we watched The Secret. And then all of us, we put together a vision board party at my house. And you have all these 40 and 50-year olds sitting on the ground playing with glue sticks and cutting out what they wanted. And I created my vision board in 2007, and I had it sitting in front of my toilet, of all places, because I figured I'd see it at least twice a day. And everything that I had ever wanted for myself, I had on there a picture of Kili, a picture of Maasai villages, a big banner across the top that said volunteerism. Everything that I'd always wanted to create for my life ever since I was a child. Uh, I had a picture of Kenya, a picture of Tanzania, a picture of the Masai Mara safaris, and just everything that I wanted. And it took 7 years, but everything on that vision board came to life with that one mission trip. And I never changed a vision board. I don't change them until they are complete. So what I did was I created an experience board and matched almost exactly my real pictures to the pictures of cutouts that I had on that original vision board. And then it occurred to me that dreamers are always going to succeed at what they want to accomplish, as long as the vision is there and as long as the vision is constant. So I'm playing around with things. like I said, I was in the coaching program already, and I said, I wonder if Dreamers Succeed is available. So I went on GoDaddy, looked it up, found that it was available, found that it was available for for the corporation was available, and I thought, this is it. This is my company. That's how that happened.
I love it. I love it. I'm also a big fan. I used to do boards all the time as a kid, and I've gotten
Really.
away from, I guess, physically doing boards.
Hmm.
But I have a pile of magazines that hopefully one day I'll actually cut out, and
I
it'll be
love
my
it.
travel vision board for
Yes, I
after
love it.
after
I love
quarantine.
it. Yeah.
So I guess so one thing that we talked about when I was on your show was the fact that I didn't take the leap until I knew what my step one was, what I was going to do. Day one, this was the first thing. So for you to come back from that journey to Kenya and decide right there and then, this is what I'm doing. And so you managed to get everything together, get your business off the ground. And it seems like 2 months. I mean, what was that actual process like when you touched down back in the States?
I was just so inspired by what I was seeing, that this organization that I traveled with, One Child, they're out of Colorado Springs, what they were doing around the world, and the fact that I had the ability to participate in that in a grander capacity, and I just got excited about the reality of, you hear a lot of these organizations, you don't know, is the money really going where they're saying it's going? And we got to actually visit the results of what the fruits of the labor that they were doing, and learned a lot more about the company, and seeing what that was. So when I came back, I was just pure, it was just pure energy. I was fired up, I was totally inspired, and I was laser focused. I knew that there was nothing else in the world for me to do but to become a champion for these children around the world. And I figured God was going to show me how, and I didn't have to worry about the how. I just needed to focus on what the vision was. And I was probably at the peak of my business, because real estate had just started to rebound, and I was probably making more money than I'd ever made in my business. And it didn't matter. I think I was so motivated by the potential and the possibility and what we were able to create, that I sort of just, it was almost as if I was in a cloud of inspiration, and everything just sort of fell into place. I got a couple of calls because my agency knew that I was going to be retiring, and people wanting to buy it, but you have to leave your license. And I said, listen, this is not. So I had a great, they become friends, people that I worked with that were always extremely gracious with me around my kids' school schedule. I worked with them part time, but when the kids were off, they always let me work from home. And I thought, what a blessing it would be if I could just give them my company. So when I called them, he said, how much do you want? And I said, I just want you to, take care of my clients, and I want you to keep my prices. And he said, no, 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 but really, how much do you want? And I said, I'm not even kidding. This is it. This is the requirement. If you can promise to do that. So it was very easy for me to just transfer everything over. I had great relationships and great relationship collateral with my clients who are still friends. That transition was very seamless. Same thing with the Orlando business. So it's almost as if everything started falling into place. And Catherine, the craziest thing is that I would get 200 emails a day, and I would be on the phone all day. And on January 1st, it's almost as if everything just stopped. My daughter was the one that very observantly pointed that out. She said, Mom, it's just like, it's crazy. It's almost like you drew a line in the sand and everything just stopped. you know the business was running with the new people who took care of all the files and took care of my clients, and I just had room to charge in the direction of what my vision was. And it was the craziest thing, but I always say God and the universe will respond. We just have to be willing to take the leap, if you will.
Wow. So, I mean, what did that actually feel like, that in this moment you realize everything is falling into exactly what it's supposed to be for me to move forward with this new life, essentially?
It was almost like not even noticeable. It was almost like, and I'm big on expectations. I believe in the power of manifestation, and I believe in the law of attraction, but I really believe that we're always going to end up with and where we expect to be. So I have always had an expectation of, this is really my vision, this is what my life is going to look like, this is what it's going to be. So, like I said, the response has always been, oh, I expected to be here, and I expected to be sponsoring these children, and I expected for my coaching business to take off, and now the speaking, so that I had the financial means to be able to sponsor as many children as I can. And I have bigger goals than where I am right now. I only have 23 kids right now, but I wanted to make sure that I could meet them. And I wanted to make sure that I had the time and the financials to be able to travel to these places. So I think, Catherine, that what happens is that you almost don't notice it. You expect it so much. And the only thing that I can equate this with is when I went to Kenya the first time, we're going down this road, we're going into the bush where the Maasai live, and I'm seeing acacia tree after acacia tree, which is very symbolic of the Kenyan landscape. And I remember I'm in this rover and I'm telling myself, I really should be more excited about this. But I've seen it so many times in my head that I feel like I've already been here. It's almost like I felt that I was, that John Denver song, Coming Home to a Place You've Never Been Before. So the expectation was always, this is just how it is. When I was working on my pilot's license, I went back to Kenya, and we're flying over the Masai Mara, which is a dream of mine to, have my own plane, and I can take, you know, goods and food into the bush where it's hard to get into. And I'm sitting in the co-pilot seat, and the pilot, because of the conversation, he said, do you fly? And I said, I'm actually getting my training. And he said, hey, you want to fly? And I'm like, yeah, I want to fly. And there I am flying over the Masai Mara, of course, with the pilot, at the helm as well. And I'm thinking, I always expected to be here, so it only makes sense that this would be happening. Not that I wasn't thrilled, not that I wasn't overly excited, but the expectation led me to make that a reality. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's kind of a peaceful feeling. I mean, not that you can still be excited, but at the same time, it's like, no, I know this is what is supposed to happen. So
Right,
of course
right,
it's happening.
exactly. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for that. That's exactly it.
Yeah. So let's talk about the pilot license, which is I was trying to remember back to the story that you shared at the Women's Summit, and I think that was skydiving, right?
Right,
Was the
right.
story that you were talking about? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So you have this this relationship with being up in the sky in
Yes,
places.
yes.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about where that came from of becoming a pilot, and because I think it was facing fears or something like that you were talking about at the summit, right?
Right, right.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those things. I'd always wanted to get my pilot's license. I'd always wanted to learn how to fly a plane, is the reality. So, funny story, when our 25th anniversary, I had worked for months to get, my husband always wanted a Harley Davidson. So I worked for months to try to get him the perfect bike. I didn't know what he wanted. I didn't know anything about motorcycles. So I got a couple of friends of mine who I knew were Harley guys to help me, because I didn't even tell my kids. I didn't tell my mom. He has friends who were Harley guys. I didn't want to ask them because I was really paying $1 for the motorcycle, and the rest was for the surprise. So I had this all conjured up, and I took him away for a spa day and had made arrangements with the dealership so that they could have the bike in my garage when we got there, and my son came down to sort of be there because it was the day before Thanksgiving. And then I'm telling him as we're driving away from home, listen, this guy's going to show up, let him in, open the garage. And we had balloons. So we get to the house after the spa day, and the garage opens and his motorcycle's there full of balloons. And he couldn't quite believe what was happening. And he's looking at me like he just didn't know, like he was in the twilight zone. And he hadn't gotten me anything, right? So I tell him, you don't understand, this is a gift for me, this seeing your face, this surprise, whatever. But he felt so bad that he ran across the street to our neighbor, who's a friend of ours, who is a pilot. He's an instructor, and he went over there and he said, please, I need you to get me out of a jam. She's always wanting to get her pilot's license. How much is it so that I can get her at least the first 40 hours or whatever? Just tell me what I have to do. And the guy walked him through it. And then he came over, the next day and said, hey, I just want you to know that, George just paid for your pilot's license and we're going to have a great time. And that's how that came about. So it wasn't that I intentionally went and got, it was sort of like so I thought, well, if this is happening now, this is happening now. And I just have loved every minute. I'm still 10 hours away. I still have to do my under the hood and my night flying to finalize that. But I've had a great time. Just that view from above, that we can see everything. And that's probably why I love jumping too, because we can see the world from a very different perspective when we're looking at it from that view.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how that happens.
Wow, what a serendipitous turn of events to get you there.
Seriously, yeah.
So then, and you mentioned this briefly, so as part of the goal when you do get your pilot's license is to be able to fly in and deliver goods into Kenya? Okay.
Yeah, my dream is to have a Cessna C220. It's the biggest thing that I can fly with a single engine rating, but it's like an Airbus, fits about 20 people, and it's got a lot of room for cargo. That's actually what they fly us in and out of the Mara, or anytime you're taking a jumper little trip. And a lot of these places, these remote places, are difficult to travel by. I think they're doing a great job now of building certain infrastructure, but when you're really, really in the bush, sometimes it's just hard to get goods, and it's just not as easy. So I would love to have one parked in Nairobi somewhere, and if the need arises, then just be able to do that. That'd be cool.
That would be very cool. That is a pretty incredible vision for that is amazing. Wow. So going back to, let's go back to the coaching side of your world, besides saving the world. But so now that you've been a coach for a while now, I mean, what has been, so let's look at the positive and the negative. So what has been one of the biggest struggles that maybe you anticipated or maybe you didn't in this life? And what's been, one of the greatest surprises, like positive surprises that has happened?
Yeah, that's a great question, Catherine. I think one of the struggles early on is that you think you're going to get out of coaching and you're going to have your certification and you're going to get certified by the ICF and you're going to go and then you're in business. That's it. Let's go get clients. And the truth is that we're constantly, at least I'm constantly investing in honing my craft as a coach. I believe I have, I think I'm at an advantage because by default, I believe in people and I believe in the power of dreams and everyone's ability to achieve what they desire. Sometimes we just need somebody to sort of cheerlead us on, or to give us a little bit of guidance and a little bit of breathing life into those dreams, which comes very natural for me. Now, the business side of coaching is a whole different animal, and I think a lot of coaches struggle with how do they do that? How do they price themselves? What are we doing? What are other people doing? Do we have to pick a niche? All those things that always come up. So I think for the first 3 years, I was really just investing in myself in trying to become a better and better coach. Even as I'm trying to build a business. So initially, I'd been in the corporate world for my entire life, since I was 18. And I said, I don't want to coach corporate. I don't want to talk business. I just want to play. I focused on adventure coaching, which came from the Killy trip. People are much more open when their adrenaline is flowing and when we're out in nature. So I figured, I came back and asked my mentor coach, I said, listen, does adventure coaching exist? And she said, what do you care? It does now. You go do your thing. And I just wanted to play with people who wanted to jump out of planes and climb mountains and go hang gliding. And in God's, you know, infinite sense of humor, 100% of my clients come to me for business. But it's my world. It's what I was really successful at all my life, especially when I went into business for myself, so I can really breathe life into that world. But because I have an affinity to really, really work with coaches and speakers, because I believe that the more of us are out there sharing a good message or bringing out the best in others, the better the world is going to be because of it. And if I can have just a little ding of a, little seed in that space, I'm going to do it all day. So what I do is I help coaches and speakers really build the business of coaching and speaking instead of just waiting for and how to structure themselves, how to price themselves. And that's really when it became easy. There was a lot of struggle at the beginning, and I invested a lot of that time in just honing my craft. And I think a lot of coaches out there, especially because anybody can be a coach, and I think there are a lot of coaches who are not necessarily certified by the ICF, who are great, marvelous coaches, because their heart is in the right place. And I think that initially that's the struggle, and I think that's what most of us as new coaches go through. But then once you remember that it's not about us, that it's all about the client, and it's all about them being able to manifest their dreams, and our role in being able to help them do that is just that. It's just focusing on their perspective and their results makes it all. We come in curious, we come in very willing to learn from them and to hear what they're saying so that we can breathe life into those dreams. Then it becomes sort of effortless, if you will, because we're just doing what is something very natural to us. I think people who get into coaching and stay in coaching were meant to be coaches. I always say I didn't pick coaching, coaching sort of picked me. Um, and that's the beauty, and that's the reward. The reward is in when you're seeing that all you did was breathe a little bit of life into someone's dream, and they took it and ran with it and have been able to create an amazing life for themselves. I think i think that's where the magic of what we get to do is. And that's when it becomes like, holy moly, like, really, I get to do this for a living. And and just grateful. You live in this space of gratitude all the time, as I'm sure you do, Catherine, because I know that you're so moved by your passion with Let Her Speak and with giving women a voice, and putting yourself in a position to be a stand for that. That we don't work. People say, oh, you're going on vacation, I don't want to interrupt you, and I'm like, listen, the lines between work and play for me are so blurred that I don't operate that way. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to work to turn myself off sometimes.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I love the term that you use, come in curious
Hmm.
to when you meet somebody. that's something that, I mean, I wish in general all of us would just do on a daily basis. Of anybody that we meet, you come in with a curious heart of just
Yes.
wanting to understand them.
Yes.
Without even if, because it's very difficult for us not to judge based off of what we're seeing in the external of
Right.
exterior of what's going on or things that we've heard, but instead to just be as authentically curious as possible.
Yes. I love that. Especially the authenticity piece.
Yeah.
And I think, Catherine, and I know you feel this way too, but I think people are amazing and beautiful. And we can't buy what they're trying to sell us in the news, because then you would think the whole world is but there's so much good going on out there. And people by default, I believe that we are good and we are giving and we are compassionate. We're just, we might be taught otherwise, but I think at our core, that's why it feels so good to give, and that's why it feels so good to do an act of kindness even. And people are amazing, and if we go in with that expectation, I always say, I always go in trusting and knowing that people are amazing, and 99.999% of the time I am proven right.
Yep.
I am proven right.
Oh yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, and it's amazing to when you give somebody the opportunity to just talk to you as their whole selves and whoever they are, without withholding any sort of notion of judgment on them. It's incredible what can come out of somebody when you come at a conversation that way. Yeah,
I love it.
absolutely.
I love it. Yes.
So one question I like to ask people is about the oh gosh, lost my train of thought for a second. One question that I talk to people a lot about is their legacy. And so I know that you obviously that's something that in the upcoming Let Her Speak event, the Women's Summit in October, that we're going to be talking about our legacies. And it seems like, you have this vision of what yours is going to be. I mean, do you, has it changed at all? Has it morphed at all? Or has it pretty consistently held? I mean, is your vision and your legacy, do you see those as one and the same, I guess, or do you see those as separate things?
And I love that, because I am a firm believer in the power of legacy. And when we're intentional about making sure that we are mindful of how we are leaving our legacy. And I always say, listen, I could die today, and I have already done everything that I wanted to do. Now I still have a 5-gallon drum. I don't have a bucket, a 5-gallon drum of things that I want to do, but I will leave happy and fulfilled. And I tell people all the time, we need to be living our lives to the fullest at every moment, because we just don't know. We just don't know. And I plan to live to be 100. Okay, but I'm gonna live as if. So I think part of, and I do see that they're connected. I think the vision and the legacy, but they are slightly different. And I always say, my mission, like most people, I think, who walk this earth, is just to leave it better than it was when I got here. And the way that I've been able to do that is already, and I can say this totally with as much certainty as I can muster, is that my kids are amazing, right? And they're going to outlive me. And I always say my daughter is the personification of kindness and hope, and my son is the personification of integrity and work ethic, which are things that I would like to leave behind as a representation of me. I had nothing to do with that. That's who they are as people. And then my granddaughter, who's 8, is just the personification of everything that is possible in the world. So I say that if I left today, that legacy in who they are is already making me extremely comfortable to leave this world a better place. Now, aside from that, there are so many ways that we can impact, and I focus on, and I think it's all in the interactions that we have. I think, yeah, for many people, there's a legacy of how much money you can leave and how much money you're donating. I agree with that 100%. But how much life are we breathing into the hopes and dreams of other people that we leave? That if they see you one time, like you said, Catherine, I'm sure you've had those great conversations. If they see you only that one time at Starbucks, they're already different because they knew you, and you don't know what that ripple is going to do. And you know what, it's not our job to keep score. I always say I keep track, but I never keep score. As an accountability coach, I am used to keeping track, and I encourage people to keep track, but I don't keep score. And I'm a firm believer in that we can make it better every day with every interaction that we have with every person. And that is part of our legacy, because that is part of what we leave behind, in my opinion. And I'm not saying that that's the right definition. That's the way I see it, and it keeps and you know what, it keeps life moving forward in a beautiful way. And sometimes people think I'm naive and, oh my god, you're whatever, and that's okay, because that's coming from their truth, and I don't judge them. But I believe that we can change the world, and I talk about that all the time. And I love working with people who believe that they can change the world, because we can.
And I guess, so what you're kind of saying, and I agree, is that a big part of legacy is in the small details.
Yes,
Of
I believe
everything
that.
that you're doing
Hmm.
consistently, day in and day
Hmm.
out. Yep.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yep, I
And I
love it.
completely can agree with that. I'm all about the one-to-one connections, the tiny details, the things that seem insignificant that make the biggest difference, instead of doing one gigantic, big, lofty thing one time.
Right, right.
It's the little things that are always adding up to.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I love the way you put it, Catherine. And what that does is it lets all of us know that we can all participate in our own legacy. We don't have to wait to have $1 billion and build a hospital or whatever. Again, all great, beautiful things, but we can all do big things in small ways, like you said, with
Mhm.
consistency.
Yeah, absolutely. So talking about your granddaughter, because I know
Hmm.
she is your heart. What has been something that she has taught you?
You know, I have blogs and blogs that I call them, lessons from Chloe Bell, lessons in the importance of what is possible. She doesn't see anything as impossible. We were at the park near our neighborhood a few weeks ago, and she starts playing with one of the little girls that was there, and she's 8, the girl was 12, and they had just put like all new equipment, and like for bigger kids equipment. And my granddaughter's climbing this like spider thing that had a giant bar really too high up, and the girl's asking her, what are you going to do when you get up there? She goes, oh, I'm going to climb on the bar, and then I'm going to walk on it to the other side, which freaked me out because it's not the safest thing to do. But I'm not going to, I'll mend her when she's broken, if she breaks. um and the little girl, who she was playing with, said, are you kidding? That's impossible. And Chloe just looked at her and said, what? Nothing is impossible. Like, with this certainty that she just knows that, listen, 12-year-old girl who I'm having a conversation with, you got to change your way of thinking, because nothing is impossible. And just the little things, we'll be on a hike or on a walk, and I always have my little cinch sack, or my backpack, and she'll see anything, a bottle or anything. She'll say, Mima, I don't know how people can throw this here. Can you believe it? Do you mind if I just stick it in your backpack? And then I'll get home with a backpack full of just garbage and whatever's going on. But those little lessons in that we all have a contribution to make. She's taught me to stop and smell the roses. She's taught me to to just to breathe, that sometimes we just need to breathe and we need to slow down. But so much compassion in that little girl. And I think we're all born that way. But she is just, she teaches me every day. I've learned so much from my children, more than I've ever learned from any teachers that I could have had all through growing up. And now I'm learning so much from her that it's just really, really amazing that's happening.
What
Very
an
blessed. Yeah.
incredible lady.
Yeah. Yeah. She's a trip and a half.
uh, so so one question then I have, since I mean, obviously you're an open book for the most part,
Mhm.
but what is something that maybe a lot of people might not know about you, or something you don't share a ton, but it's a big part of who you are?
I think one of the biggest things is that we all have certain fears, right? And we all have certain things that keep us in our comfort zone. And I'm probably the one that has the most. And I think for a long time, I think I was really gravitating towards coaching people out of their comfort zone because I was in such a comfort zone. And I say that when I was 46 years old, I overdosed. And that's when I mean, I menopaused early. I menopaused at 42. By 45, I was dry. Sorry, maybe too much information. But menopause was extremely magical for me. Like, people, we grow up hearing smack, people talking smack about menopause. Menopause is amazing, ladies. So if you're not there yet, get ready, because it's going to be a page turner for you. And at 46, I just looked at myself in the mirror one day and I was like, who the hell is this woman looking back at me right now? I was loved my business I was in, very successful, was in a back then 27-year-old 26-year marriage, had raised our kids. They were off and living on their own, and I thought, you know what, I we were taking care of both of our moms, lived with us, and I thought, you know what, I realized that from the outside it looks really good. On paper it looks really good, but I'm full of empty, and I've got to do something, because this is not working for me. And I had to be very intentional about how I was going to navigate the next 54 or 55 years that I had left on this planet, sort of on my terms, because we grow up in this box, Cuban, Catholic, it's like everything, right? Grow, with your mom's there, everybody's watching and everybody's close. And I thought, how do I break the mold without, disrespecting, and without them thinking that I've lost my mind? And little by little, I just started stretching the boundaries of what that looked like, and did it until I had stretched it enough that and listen, I stretch it every day, and I will continue to do it for the next, I have 47 good years now left here. Um, we'll continue to stretch those boundaries every day, but I did things, Catherine, that I never thought that I would do. And and it only came from the intentionality that I had to making sure that I was living authentically, and stretching, and and being true to myself, because that was the best legacy I could leave for my children, and the best legacy I could leave for my granddaughter. And and that changed everything. But I was in the limiting belief box from hell all my life. And I think a lot of us live there. And and sometimes it just takes an invitation into something out of the ordinary, an invitation into, or just a thought that you're going to sit there and play with it and see what comes up. And I don't know if that answered your question, but that was a big one for me. I was the limiting belief box queen of the world for 46 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly something that, I mean, to meet you now, you would never think that. And I love that, you're so open to put out into the world and changing the narrative of what we view women's abilities as they get older to be. Because, the narrative has been the limitations and opportunities dry up, once you get into your 40s, especially as a woman,
Right.
in particular. And I love that there's more and more voices, yours included, that are showing women and changing what that conversation is of, wait, hold on, we're still we're still here, and we're still doing things. Because that's something, I mean, my mom was 43 when she had me. So she was in that boat too of wait, no, I can still be a mom and do all the things, chase the kid around.
I love it.
She followed me at all of the parks, every slide I wanted to go down, she was right there with me. And I'm just envisioning, this woman that's almost 50 chasing me around, people probably thinking I'm her granddaughter. And,
I love it.
So I love seeing, that we're constantly getting reminded and changing that view that, an older woman is someone who can have a lot of energy and a lot of things still to do. It's not that you hit this peak and then it starts going down at all. So I love that.
Yeah. And that's super interesting, Catherine. My husband's mom had him at 45. She thought she was menopausal. But what's interesting, and I'll share a little story. We were in marriage counseling for like 3 years, about 5 years ago. We were just going through a rough patch, and it was just so much pressure from everywhere. Highly recommend counseling and therapy always to anyone. Don't read what people are saying. Oh, if you're doing something's wrong. No, you go so you can make things better. And I remember we're sitting there, and when things started getting, super uncomfortable, the therapist just said, listen, I just have to ask you guys. And he looks at my husband and he says, listen, where do you see yourself now? And at the time, I think he was 51 or something. And he said, listen, I've built my businesses. I've raised my kids. I just want to come home, enjoy my granddaughter, and watch TV and ride Harleys and go on bike trips with my friends, go on vacation with my family a couple of times a year. And I'm ready to just rest, and and our therapist knew me, and he said, okay, Berta, what about you? And I said, I'm just getting started. I don't know about you. So he said, this is the divide, and this is where we have to sort of start bridging a gap. And it's so interesting because, Catherine, as you said that, I'm thinking, my 40s were so much better than my 30s, and my 50s are so much better than my 40s, that I'm like looking forward to say, I'll take the gray hair and the wrinkles and the sagging, everything. But I know that it's only going to get better as the years pass, and it all comes from, we find our place, and we get to live there, because now nobody's telling us that we can't. And if they're telling us, we're not listening. So I love that you mentioned that, because I think that's so, the vision, a part of what I see of the vision of Let Her Speak is just to empower women all the time. And I love that you do that, and I love that I know this is going to be a huge movement. So I love that you're working so hard to make that space for us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I love because I'm in the same boat too, of just, it's only going to get better type of mindset. When I was in college, I remember one of my professors, very cool guy. The class itself was just like learning Excel, which was not supposed to be an exciting class at all. It was a requirement. But he would always open up the floor of, ask me whatever questions you want to. So this guy was probably in his 60s at the time. He was an adjunct professor, I believe. So he would only come to campus every so often. And one day a student asked him, what has been the best years of your life? so far.
Wow.
And us being in our 20s, even back then, it was always, high school's the greatest time of your life, or college are the best years of your life. And I remember always thinking back in my mind, if these are the best years of my life, I am seriously disappointed. I am underwhelmed by this. But I remember the guy saying, he was like, right now is the best years of my life. And he, explained why and where his journey's been. And it was in that moment that I think it was always in the back of my mind, but I was so glad somebody who has been through a lot was sitting in front of me telling me, is that you're always, the best years of your life, you should always be reaching for the current state that you're in to be the best. And so I think that's something that was resonated a lot with me, being, a 20-year-old sitting in a classroom.
And what a gift if like if others were paying attention, what a gift and what an invitation into what's possible beyond, we're always going to be living. And I feel like that. I always say, my husband even sometimes asks me, if you could go back to 30, I said, listen, I'll keep the wrinkles and the gray hair. I'll keep it all. I would not go back to anything other than right now, because this is pretty epic.
Yep. Yeah. And I remember, I would not want to go back to my 20s ever. They can stay there. I want to keep going my way. I remember always, being so excited for getting older, because it's like, one day I'm going to figure out who in the world I am, and I'm going to be so confident in who that person is that it's going to be amazing. And so and so I'm glad that there's a driving conversation, and that's getting louder and louder, that that especially for women, and I know this is talked about in like the Hollywood world, but in just general, that just because you hit 40, your only role and options shouldn't just be the witch.
Right. Exactly.
Yep. Great. Well, the last question that I'd love to ask you, because I'm always compiling for the community, resources or books or videos or whatever that is. But what are ones that are speaking to you right now, of things that you're reading or watching?
I am loving. The Go Givers is a go-to. That's the Go Giver and How to Think and Grow Rich are always just biblical. They sort of stay in the cycle of everything. I'm reading a great book right now. It's called Connected, which is amazing. And I'm big on the connections that we make and how we share with our tribe, those key beautiful people that we run into, and make sure that other people get to enjoy them as well. So that book is really, really great. As far as watching, I am actually in the middle of smack dab in the middle of I'm a big movie buff, so I was so suffering this quarantine because the movies were closed everywhere. So September's my birthday month, so I decided that, and they just opened in Miami on like the 21st of August. So I decided that in the month of September I was going to watch 30 movies at the theater to celebrate the drought that I had during quarantine. So I just watched, I mean, and a lot of the movies, because some of the people aren't coming out, they're playing a lot of the old movies. Like I watched Jurassic Park again in the theater, which is totally different, and I love the Jurassic Park series. I watched Peanut Butter Falcon. No, Peanut Butter Falcon. Have you seen that?
No, I've seen previews.
Oh my goodness, everyone, please, just please. So good. Just a lot of great. I'm a big movie buff. So, but I like movies. I gotta catch Mulan, but that's only on Disney. But and I'll catch it because we have Disney. Um, there's just a lot of really good quality um content out there, movies, TV, a lot of really good breathing life, a lot of great documentaries. I love the documentaries on Netflix that breathe life into passion and into all the beautiful things people are doing out there. There's a lot of good going on out there, and I'm glad people are highlighting it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, I've heard a
Yeah.
lot of great things about the Go-Givers. So
Yes, amazing. If you haven't, it's just amazing. And Bob Berg, who's the author, is a dear friend and a mentor, and was a coach, and I was very blessed to have that, to have to be immersed in that. So highly recommend it.
Okay, great. Well,
All right,
and
girl.
happy birthday month, by the way.
Thank you so
Right
much.
now we're in
We
September.
celebrate all month, so
Yeah,
that's good. Thank you.
good, as you should. You should.
Yes, amen.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Berta, and for everything that you've shared. I feel like I've learned even more about you than I have previously. And thank you for being a master connector. I mean, I have met so many amazing women. I think more people this year virtually being connected with people than I think a lot of the previous years where I was actually going to
I love
places.
it.
So thank
love
you
it.
so much for
I love it.
being a supporter and an advocate and everything.
And Catherine, thank you for having me, and for everything that you do. You know, I'm a huge fan, and I'm trying to show you off. You make me look good. People are like, "Oh, you know Catherine?" I'm like, "Yeah, she's my friend." So I just want you to know that even if you don't hear it all the time, we are behind you, and we are breathing life into this vision that you have with Let Her Speak, and listen, you're amazing, and I love that you've put yourself, taken up the challenge to really be a stand for all of us. So thank you again for that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's easy to close in into your own space as you're working on things. So that means a lot to
Good,
hear that
good.
it's actually getting out there. So
Absolutely, it is. It
Uh,
absolutely is.
well, thank you so much, Berta. I hope you
All
have
right.
a great rest of your day, rest of your
Thank you.
week, birthday
Absolutely.
stuff.
Yes. Amen. All right, Missy. Thank you again, Catherine. Have a great one.
Thanks. You too. I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Now that you've had the opportunity to learn about my friend Berta, tune in to our next episode where we catch up with her 2 years later to learn about the journey she has been on. This episode of She Speaks is brought to you by our amazing partners at First Horizon Bank. She Speaks is produced, edited, and scored by the very talented Travis Tench at Oak Hill Audio. If you loved the episode you just heard and want to support Let Her Speak's mission of elevating real women's stories, don't forget to follow, subscribe, and share at Let Her Speak USA. Together, we will make our voices heard.